Welcome to Rooted to Thrive, conversations to elevate our humanity. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, Professor P for short. This is your podcast sanctuary for cultivating mindsets and skills to elevate our shared humanity. We're taking a deep dive into practical strategies to evolve as anti-racist, culturally competent, and inclusive individuals and leaders. In each episode, we're bringing you real-world examples and actionable takeaways. We're going to talk about personal growth, fostering connection, and creating positive change that dismantles systemic barriers and creates environments where all of us are valued, empowered, and activate our collective power. This is Rooted to Thrive. Welcome to Rooted to Thrive, conversations that elevate our humanity. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, aka Professor P, and I'm so excited to be on this journey with you. This podcast dives deep into best practices for anti-racist, culturally competent, and inclusive leaders and educators. Now, the purpose is simple: to share insights from a range of voices to help us align our thoughts and actions to honor the human dignity in our professional and personal lives, and especially in learning environments. Almost every episode will include conversations with another person. But in this first episode, I wanted to share a little bit about myself and why I am doing this. In a world that's increasingly diverse and interconnected, it's crucial that we, people in helping professions, cultivate environments where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. I know you've heard that before, but I just wanted to really get out here and in this podcast that was born out of my restlessness about reaching more people who want to recognize the worth of other human beings. But in so many subtle ways, we fall short of that. It's actually a part of us being human. I also wanted to add to the voices of inspiration that are in our social media feeds. There are so many people leaning into criticism and not enough voices that are of people who share experiences that challenge and support us all at the same time. So instead of sitting back and continuing to watch the constant criticism and or participate in this cancel culture, God just put it on my heart to use this platform to add light in our feeds. So the name, Rooted to Thrive, that came from my belief that at our roots, our foundation, humans were created to grow and thrive. I've devoted my entire adult life to helping others thrive through mentoring, coaching, instruction, training, and programming. Now, over almost 40 years, I've simply wanted to be a catalyst for positive change, to help people achieve their potential for greatness. I work directly with people to support their self-efficacy and their skill development. I advocated from them from my place at the table as a leader, and I helped other people who were in or entering helping professions think beyond their own limited experiences, deepen their understanding of their own values and beliefs, and their understanding of the values and beliefs of the people they serve. I have had many experiences that shaped who I am, who I think I am, and who I want to be in the world. I know that a lot of other people out there, some of you I know and many I don't know, understand that, right? But much of what we carry with us sits just outside of our view in our blind spots. Now, I had the benefit of studying sociology when I was in college, and I studied and thought about how people live together, how people, organizations, and societies change, and why people do what they do in interactions with others. I share that only because I want you to know that I've spent some time focused on some of the issues that we'll talk about in each episode. But I believe that through our multitude of stories, human stories, we can gain practical ways to uncover how we see ourselves and how we see others. And I know that we can be people who are much better at building people up instead of tearing them down. I know you might be thinking, I want to build people up. I value diversity. Sure, I do too. Unfortunately, subtly over time and through many different sources, we've been conditioned or programmed to devalue difference. We've been conditioned so deeply, most of us can't see how we do it. So even though many of us talk about valuing people who are different from us, many of us don't show it in ways that matter to those people. Well, I'm hoping with this podcast to touch the hearts and minds of educators and leaders anywhere because I count on the fact that we all care about people's well-being. Now, I recently had to trace my journey as an educator for a book chapter. And as I kept asking myself why and how I became so committed to helping people whose needs were barely met, if at all, in learning environments, on the surface, I had many educational experiences myself that I wanted to share, and I wanted that for every child and young adult. But something came up for me that I had to include because just like my experience in schools influenced my choices, so did my experience outside of that. So, in addition to having a lot of educational privileges, I also was not safe as a young girl. I was prey to men who were taught that women and girls were worth less than them. And after all, you know, in the United States, and I dare say in many countries and on many continents across the globe, we were considered property, right? Like a lamp, like a car, like a chair. You get the picture. Those same men were and still are celebrated for sexual conquest of females and celebrated for violence against anyone. Now, I saw physical and mental abuse of women by men, and I watched too many people that I care about try to numb their pain with alcohol. I also grew up at a time where children were to be seen and not heard, and we were to do as we were told by adults and not as they did. I'm sure somebody else heard that, do as I say, not as I do. I only share this because when it's in our collective psyche, our culture, to see other humans as worth less than other humans, people are hurt physically and psychologically, or both. It's not just a few sick people out there. There are messages we're all getting from many sources that influence how we see ourselves and how we see others. Unfortunately, a lot of what we've been taught explicitly and what we caught from what we heard and what we saw sets us up to leave millions, billions of people on the planet physically and psychologically unsafe. Now, my trauma story is extreme, right? It's an extreme example of what happens when we devalue women and children. What's more pervasive, though, is the many subtle ways that the majority of us continue to replicate that. that narrative. So here I am assuming the goodwill of most people. I also assume that we are not consciously aware of what we do. So today, after years of research, lived experiences, healing, and many years of faith in God's ability to transform hearts and minds, I want to use this platform to help well-meaning folks wake up, interrupt that programming that has had us dehumanizing each other or staying in denial about how people are harmed and thinking that it's okay. So, if I'm being honest, I believe I started as a staunch advocate in my 20s, in my early 20s, for my young Black and Brown students because I wanted to be the person that I thought I needed to keep me safe, to be that person to take a stand for me and show me that I mattered. Now, today, I advocate for anyone experiencing oppression in education. I believe I wasn't always as effective as I could be, especially as someone who experienced and witnessed the traumas I mentioned earlier. But there was a turning point when I experienced the transformation I hope to inspire. It was in the early 1990s. I remember seeing headlines almost daily about the gay community fighting for health benefits and even the right to be with their partner when they were in the hospital as a committed partner and family member would be able to do, right? It hit me like a ton of bricks one day that I had never thought about how gay couples were not allowed to legally marry, how health care benefits were tied to legal marriage, and how I, a heterosexual woman, did not even have to question my ability to marry or share health benefits with my partner. This was literally the first moment I recall when I saw the systemic inequities that impacted groups other than Black and Brown people and other people of color. I knew gay people were stigmatized and were subjected to violence, even murder, simply because they were gay. I believed my gay friends who told me that they were born gay, and it was not a choice, as many of the people in my predominantly Christian circles would have said, right, and were saying. But the privileges I had that affected my quality of life, my freedoms that gay people didn't have, were in my blind spots. And once I understood that I was blind to my heterosexual privileges that I enjoyed in these United States, I was able to marry who I loved, able to share health benefits. I could suddenly see how many white folks didn't see racism the way I and so many people of color did. Now, that right there, that set me free in so many ways. The fact that I could see how I, as a human, was operating just like other humans who had privileges that I didn't have, that set me free from major resentments that I had at the time. I was carrying a lot too. And I know that it set me free because I physically felt a difference in my body when I spoke to white people after that. I was already in roles as an educator where I had to educate students and colleagues about these very issues and had not fully examined my own life yet. Once I was able to bring those privileges out of my blind spots, I was so much more effective in my relationships and in my work. From that point on, I developed an automatic habit of self reflection and introspection that has really served me well to this day. I will examine my behavior. Who was I gravitating toward in my personal life and at work? Whose concerns I automatically prioritized and whose I didn't? And I reflect on why I was gravitating to certain groups and serving one group more or more effectively than another. Yeah, I did that work for myself. And it has brought me joy in my work, right? Like some work wasn't as hard anymore as an educator. And I want that freedom, that joy for other educators and other leaders. So it's led to a lifetime of course correcting as a part of the work that I do to serve people well. I'm in whatever I do. Now, at first, I had to be intentional about, myself, those questions, because I needed to develop a new habit, right? I had to strengthen a muscle, learn a new skill. But eventually, I didn't have to think about it anymore. It became a part of me, an automatic habit, just like brushing my teeth every morning. I don't need to think about it anymore. I just do it. I also give myself grace, right? I haven't had every experience yet. If I stay focused on asking those questions, I find my way to help people feel valued, seen, and heard. Yeah. Rooted to Thrive listeners to experience that freedom I have, free from the pain of feeling helpless too, like a victim. I wanted I want you all to get insights into the habits and characteristics of people who are anti-racist and anti-oppressive. Build on your knowledge about structural violence against cultures different from your own and the sources of joy in those cultures different from your own as well. So I hope this show is one among many places you can go to grow. In our episodes, I'll sit down with thought leaders across industries and all walks of life. Folks, I believe everybody is a thought leader. Everybody. All guests have concrete ideas worth sharing to help elevate the human experience, especially for people in helping professions. Now, I must admit, in the first season, there are a lot of people who most people, everybody would call experts. They are experts. Many of them are researchers, many of them are educators, leaders, um, with terminal degrees. Some are not. But for the most part, that has been my circle, right? I'm in a circle of people who are considered scholars. Um, they are all scholars in their own right, all experts. I don't mean to diminish that, but what I want to be clear about is that there are people without the degrees that we will learn from, can learn from, and I boldly say we should learn from. So in each episode, we'll feature practical steps that you can apply immediately. And we'll share real life experiences and stories about what works and sometimes what hasn't worked to help individuals and groups thrive. Open Rooted to Thrive will be more than just a podcast for you, but a part of a community. You can find us to subscribe and share. We're going to be on Spotify. We are on Spotify. Yes, YouTube. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite platform and share it in your networks. Help us reach 1 billion people on the planet. And then join the conversation too. Follow us on LinkedIn at Perceptions, the word Perceptions, Perceptions, or on Instagram and Facebook at Perceptions Unlimited. And stay connected to join this conversation. We want to hear your thoughts and experiences too, because they all matter. And I want to thank you for tuning in for this first episode of Rooted to Thrive, conversations that elevate our humanity. Remember, each of us has the power to make a difference. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. And until then, keep thriving.